Jeff, Walgreens Boots Alliance has a new incoming CEO. As you know, I've been a big fan of Roz Brewer. I guess it's been a month or so ago that they announced that she was going to leave, right? She was going to step off the board and she was going to leave as CEO. She wasn't able to make it work. Great success as a president at Starbucks and on the board of directors at Starbucks, just couldn't find the right formula to do the pivot and to take Walgreens forward with their growth strategy. They got a new guy coming in. He's from Cigna, which is somewhere in the health part. It's actually part of CVS now. But he's coming in, and it sounds like they've got somebody that gets the industry and understands what Walgreens is trying to do. Jeff, my question for you, and the conversation I want to have with you, do you think he can come up with a plan to save Walgreens' dividend? What do you think? You want to have a conversation about it?
Let's do it.
All right. Before we do that, just a reminder, I am Jason Hall. This is The Smattering, and our videos are sponsored by The Motley Fool. If you're looking for even more great stock ideas than what we're going to talk about right here, please go to our special link, fool.com/The Smattering. Motley Fool is going to give you its 10 best stocks to buy right now. Please check out that link after this video. Okay, Jeff. So Walgreens Boots Alliance, this is a company that's been paying and growing its dividend every year for decades at this point. But in the healthcare industry, whether it's the pharmacy side of it, doctor's offices, urgent care, benefits management, it's become really vertically integrated, right? We're seeing more and more vertically integrated companies do it. And all of the changes that have happened, even the internet, have gradually eroded away Walgreens' core business. Now, the plan, they were going to take a little bit of the CVS model. CVS with its minute clinics that they're opening inside CVS stores and some small urgent care facilities. We're going to do the same thing. They were going to bring healthcare into the stores. The idea being, well, people are coming here already to get medicines and other healthcare related goods. Why not have a place they can also go to get checkups? They have a little bug. They want to go come in and get checked up. Maybe an urgent care is not convenient for them. And it's a great way to have something that's convenient. Allow them to leverage the thousands of locations they already have, get more bang for the buck for that real estate that they already have. And oh, by the way, if somebody shows up for healthcare, there's a pharmacy there. There's a convenience store there. There's all of the other things. Create a flywheel. And Jeff, it hasn't worked out really well so far.
And it's such an intuitively smart idea. You have the two ends of the healthcare spectrum. You have your primary care physician who you would go to with a scheduled appointment, your yearly checkup, and ideally you'd go see if you had any issues. And then on the other end of the spectrum, there's, God forbid, the emergency room, and then the step up from that, the urgent care. Just speaking personally, I've been to the urgent care in my town way more times than I've been to my primary care doctor over the past several years, just because sometimes I don't feel good on a Saturday night or something like that. So, and I have a Walgreens that's even closer to my house than the urgent care. So the idea that I could go there, get a prescription, get it filled, buy some Sudafed, walk out the door is really appealing. But as you pointed out, it's not just Walgreens, it's CVS also that really has struggled to get that integrated concept up and off the ground. So this new CEO clearly has the background in the healthcare space. You can tell that choice was made to further this business direction along. I think the jury's out about whether he'll be successful and whether this can actually take hold. But I have so many locations and it makes so much sense. You hope that someone can figure out how to do it.
Yeah, and I've reached the point where I think, and Jeff, I think from talking to you about this too, I think this is something you agree a little bit too. I've become far more skeptical because neither of these companies have exactly hit it out of the park with it. We just heard Walgreens earnings that they just announced when they reported they are still losing a pretty substantial amount of money on that healthcare business in this latest financial period they reported. That's a lot of money that they're burning through for something that they just haven't been able to figure out how to get the scale to generate profits from. And you take that, Jeff, and you combine that with what's happening with their pharmacy business. One of the things they talked about that's been a headwind for revenues on the retail side and the pharmacy side is we're generally post-COVID now. Far less people are getting immunizations, getting vaccines than were during 2020, 2021, and even early 2022. So they're not seeing the same revenues for testing and the same revenues for COVID vaccines in stores they were getting. So that's a headwind. And then, oh, by the way, I mentioned that vertical integration that we've seen in the healthcare industry. It sounds like Walgreens is also maybe struggling with the rates that they're getting from these benefit managers and maybe not fully maximizing the prices they could get for prescription revenues as well. So you take all of these things and you put them together. And I certainly understand why they're bringing in a new CEO. And he's got a lot of work to do to turn the corner. Let's talk about the dividend for a minute here. I mentioned this is a company that's been paying its dividend for multiple decades and increased it every single year. It's made it on those lists and indexes for dividend growing companies. And the problem is with the pressures on its profitability from its pharmacy business and its retail business, and then the additional costs, the cash burn from trying to stand up the healthcare business. Now, they also are focusing on getting more lean. I think they're looking to drive about $1 billion a year in excess expense out of the operation. And they lowered part of this. They reduced their capital expenditures plan. I think they're going to spend around $600 million on CapEx. That's a good bit lower than what they were planning. So you already see them trying to cut costs. My question is, do you think that management's going to try to save this dividend? The yield's over 8% at this point. Or do you think they're going to get to the point where it's time we have a new CEO that's come in, we're going to reevaluate our growth strategy? Maybe a lot of the bad news is already priced in. Maybe it's time to just cut it.
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that question. I will say that we've talked a lot about the healthcare business and whether it can get off the ground. This fiscal year, it had a loss, an adjusted EBITDA loss of $376 million. They're looking to be around break even next fiscal year. So I wonder if and that's just one indicator, obviously, but I feel like if they see any light at the end of that tunnel, they're going to do everything they can to hold on to that dividend. I don't know, maybe instead of cutting it, maybe they just don't raise it. But these companies that have these long streaks of raising their dividend and they get on these lists, they typically don't want to have that streak end. It's a thing they're usually proud of. So if I were a betting man, I'd say they do everything they possibly can to hold on to it. But I do think that they're going to have to really see the results start to show in order to actually be able to keep it. But I'll say this is just as a final thought for me, whether or not this is successful or for them, it almost feels like it's going to be whether or not the business is successful, because as you pointed out, being a straight up pharmacy is going to probably continue to be eroded by online players and big companies like Amazon getting involved. It almost feels like this has to work for the company to be viable into the future.
There's a difference between viability and insolvency, right? I don't think we're making the case for insolvency, but it would certainly be entering into a period of long-term decline. The key to me is that for the company to continue to pay the dividend at the level that it's at, I'm a shareholder, by the way, something has to give. Driving that cost out to get to break even on an EBITDA basis would help. They also, again, they need to deliver on some of these other cost reduction areas. If they can deliver them, I do think the dividend is salvageable. Like I said, they certainly don't want to cut it. I guess the way I want to close it is saying that the best way that I think most investors should think about it right now, and here's how I'm thinking about it, is if you're an income investor, you're buying stocks specifically counting on the dividend that they're paying, that you feel like it's a promise that you're going to get that dividend because you're going to be relying on it for your income. I don't know that I would put Walgreens on that list. If you're a little bit more of a risk tolerant investor who thinks they've got the right leadership in place now, they can turn the business around, whether the dividend makes it or not, and you think 3 to 5 years from now, the stock price can appreciate substantially, and maybe at some point the dividend can return to growth, that's a different story. But I think the best thing most investors could do right now, and this is me included, again, as a shareholder, is just sit on your hands and watch. Let's find out if this new CEO really has the chops to lead the business forward, hear what he's saying, hear how the company's doing against what he's saying, and then maybe reevaluate at that point.